Good afternoon. This is Mike Farley with Poolside Perspectives, and we're thrilled that you're here to join us for another episode. And we are going to talk about the key element for the resort at home.
Yep.
We're talking about the swim up bar stool.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to talk about where does it work and how to design it and construct it. And we're going to talk about fails, and we're going to talk about successes, and we're going to talk about some case studies. So we're going to cover it all. So we should have a lot of fun today.
Oh, yeah. I think the swim up bar is one of my favorite things.
It has gotten extremely popular in swimming pools. I mean, I can go back 10 years ago and I never did it.
Yeah.
And, within the last several years, almost every project that I'm doing that there's certain elements involved, it's a given. So it just depends on the clients. Everybody's different in how they want their space, but it is a very popular space.
Oh, yeah. I always thought it was a really cool space, but then I took a trip to Cabo, and now I'm like, wow, I really like that space. Because you use it, and then you're like, oh, this is actually really fun. So.
Yeah. So the key to a swim up bar or bar stools is generally a wet dry relationship. So you've got people that might be hanging out in a cabana and they're dry and they're interacting with the people that are in the pool that are wet. Yeah. So it's a place that people can congregate. Although there's several other combinations that are becoming more popular too. So we've got people that want to be in a sunken fire pit and with a bar stool for the same situation.
Yeah, so it's pretty much swapping out the covered kitchen area or whatever typically it is with the sunken fire pit.
Right. So the other thing is we sometimes have the, wet and cool and wet and warm situation that's going on as well.
Yeah.
Where they set it up with a spa.
Yeah.
So we're going to put bar stools flanking around the spa so people can hang out and interact eye to eye with people like in a sunken spa, not a raised spa. And then you've got people that all the time are reacting with people that are just swimming around in the pool that just stand by the edge of the pool, and the pool happens to be at the same height as a bar counter or a kitchen counter or maybe even a table. And, they're hanging out with their drinks, interacting with each other and with you in the pool.
I think the benefit of that is there's a lot of situations where if you're just having a pool party, people will put drinks on the coping in general. But having like a designated space where drinks are supposed to go, it just helps. So when someone's walking, some pools, people use the coping as a walkway because they might not have, decking in the back.
I had a client years ago, and they had a house at Possum Kingdom Lake. And they said, I said, what's your average gathering? And they said, it depends. If it's a typical Friday or Saturday night, it's 4 or 5 of us. But if it's at the 4th of July weekend,
yeah,
there's 100 people here.
It's a lot more traffic for sure.
Okay. And so the elevation change on that particular project made it such that basically half the pool was 42 inches above the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So now we had basically a whole lot of area that people could stand around, and their choice was not to set it up for bar stools. So the difference there is the coping size, the overhang of that piece of material.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have bar stools, you want to get your knees up under it, just like you get your knees up underneath the table. So you typically need about 9 inches, 9, 10, 12, something, figure out what the customers are comfortable with.
Yeah, you got to have overhang because I've been to several bars where they don't, and it's just really awkward. You're hunched over just trying to stabilize yourself or sitting back in the bar stool that usually isn't really that structurally sound anyways. So, yeah.
You got to sit sideways. I guess that's what ladies feel like, side saddle on a horse. That's kind of awkward.
Yeah, it is. So having that overhang is by far key.
Yeah, I like my legs underneath me.
Oh, yeah.
So the first thing to really consider is if you're going to have a bar stool and it's in the pool, is it just, at the end of the pool, or is it at the side, or are you putting it in conjunction? What's your favorite situation to have it done with?
So location is key. So with a lot of features, there might not be very aesthetically pleasing, but if it's a typical, covered structure, you have a a kitchen in there or living room area, and they have a bar that you can swim up to in the pool. That is something aesthetically that is pleasing in my opinion, that if I walk through the front door and I see that right away through the back windows, I think that's great. It could be also pushed to the side either way. I think it's not like a slide that, sometimes it's just not as aesthetically pleasing as you would want it to be. So I think it could go anywhere, ideally. But for sure, I would want it to be around wherever the kitchen gathering area is going to be outside.
So if you're going to have so you're talking about in this space that's sunken, you have the kitchen and you have a bar. So one of the things that I've found over the years is if I try to put appliances in the space where my bar is, the depth of the counter that I have to have is really big.
Okay.
And so I'm going to have to push your drink across to you.
Yeah.
Because
that could be a con for some people, reaching across and might not be able to get the drinks across that easily is a con. But then it's also for those that want to like do other stuff than just drink on that table area, that spot, like play a board game or something like that. I don't know. So that'd be a plus to have more space, but also negative for just drinking in general.
So if I just have the pool wall and I have an overhang going into the pool and I have an overhang coming into the dry space, that slab of material has got to be 3 feet across.
Yeah.
Okay.
Minimum.
Yeah. So now if I'm going to put appliances in there, like if I'm going to put a fridge in there, well, I need another 2.5 feet.
Yeah. Cause that 3 you said? That's just the pool wall.
That's just the pool wall.
Yeah, so you're adding space for the actual appliances that go butted up to it.
So now instead of 3 feet, I'm 5.5 feet across there. So it's a big span to go across. So one of those solutions is you just come in and you put the bar, and then off to a side, one of the L's going off of this bar that's where I'm going to have my refrigerator, my ice maker, my sink. And so I can prep drinks and all that type of thing. And then I can serve the people that are sitting in the dry space and the wet space, and they can interact with each other, and they're fairly close to each other. They're not like across a big table. Like this table right here is probably bigger than 4 feet, but at 5 feet, you're a long ways apart. You can't even play Catan in the middle there. You're not going to be able to, that's the right game, right?
Yeah, and if you're dealing cards too, it gets a little difficult.
So,
but if you have a drink like a bottle or something, you could probably slide it without it falling over. But who knows?
It depends on the countertop, which we'll get into later.
And the hand-eye coordination. You might actually tip it over. So.
There's that too. There could be an expansion joint too.
Oh, yeah. Well, that goes into materials, so that's a whole nother thing.
That's another thing. So the other thing with this swim up bar counter is it's ideally to have, your cold elements all the one side, but then it's ideal to the other side to have all if you're going to be cooking down there, your warm stuff. We've got, our pizza oven and our grill and our side burners and all those things that we're cooking on is off to the side, so you're not cooking in somebody's face, and it makes it more people can interact better across the counter space itself.
Yeah, I like that situation because with traffic in that area, I remember growing up when we go backpacking, you always wanted less cooks in the kitchen because then it's not as crowded. People aren't knocking over pots. It's the same situation with this, because when you have that long, I could just imagine when you have that long countertop or bar, and you have so many appliances stacked in the same area, I could imagine if you're trying to have a cookout, people are trying to serve drinks, they're trying to set the table, or whatever it might be, it would just get real crowded. So having that, designated areas for certain things is ideal.
It's a better layout. Yes. So one thing I guess that I should start with is the very first swim up bar that I did was in conjunction with the Sunken cabana. It was cool. And then we put the refrigerator was in there, so it was a big counter space going across. But the other thing is, this was in a fairly flat backyard.
Okay.
In fact, the yard went up, not down, and relationship to the back of the yard was higher than the house itself.
This is a sunken area.
So this is a sunken cabana
Mm.
with a bar, and we sunk it down 3 feet.
Okay.
So where does the water go when it rains?
It goes downhill.
So we had a roof over it. So theoretically, the water didn't go into the space. But as we all know, when it rains, that's not necessarily what happens. So there's a drain in the bottom, but the drain couldn't gravity drain out to the street. So, and I know in some parts of the country, this is very common that you have flat properties. Like down in Houston, there's no hills down in Houston. You go to Florida, there's no hills in Florida.
Lubbock.
Okay. You go to Lubbock, there's no hills in Lubbock. So there's a lot of flat places. Davis, California, where I, lived a long time ago. There's flat land. So if you're going to do one of these sunken areas, you have to have a sump pump.
Okay.
So, and there are some disadvantages to sump pumps.
I think this is a very important detail that a lot of people should know, because sunken areas are very popular. I understand you feel at home, it's cozy, you're covered by the wind and all that kind of stuff, but if you really can't do it when it's flat without a sump pump.
Right. So, and as long as the sump pump works,
yeah,
we're in great shape.
Oh yeah.
Okay. The challenge is a lot of times when you have the nastiest storm possible and it's coming down in torrential situations, you have power outages.
Yeah.
You have a power outage and you have a lot of water, and now you have a new swimming pool.
Yep, a little bathtub.
And the problem is sometimes that's where your refrigerator is down in the bathtub.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's where your ice maker is.
Or a nice grill.
Well, you'd have to get a lot of water to get up into
it. We're talking big storms, so there's some storms that can do it.
You could, but the sunken fire pit, you're talking about the fire feature, that type of situation. So it's just something you need to be aware of, that there is a possibility that those things could occur.
Yeah.
Now, some people are like, well, we live in Florida. We have hurricanes. Sometimes we get, surge and, it covers up the whole house. So we're not worried about a little fire pit out there. So everybody's different.
Yeah.
So you just need to be aware of the things that you're deciding when you go to build something. Now, the thought of not putting a sump pump in there,
it's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I know I've talked to some guys in Arizona that are like, well, it doesn't rain that much here. And so we're just going to put some drains in the bottom of this and hopefully it naturally drains out. Okay. Well, that's okay. That's not the gamble that I want to make.
No, not at all.
So when I design a swim up bar that's in a sunken area, almost all the time I do it today, it's not with a sump pump. The first one I did, it had a sump pump on it, and we've had a couple of problems with it. And for the most part, the homeowner's been happy about it. So, and he knew going in that there was this risk, and it was a risk versus reward. And he chose that there was enough reward with the sunken area that he chose to do that.
Yeah.
So that's a personal situation. But for the most part, then I'm dealing with trying to sink it down enough that I can still deal with natural drainage. So because of that, I have different heights of my counter inside the sunken area relative to that.
Okay.
So I don't want to get it too low, because if it's too low, then I can't get the water out naturally through natural gravity drainage. So sometimes I have a counter that is just like this tabletop.
Okay.
It's 30 inches up. So with it 30 inches up, I can pull up with a chair and interact with my friends that are in the bar and a typical bar height. So that works fine.
Just a chair, not a bar stool.
It's not a bar stool. It's just a chair.
Yes.
Then the other is, some of them are 36 inches.
Okay.
So they're counter height. So I can get counter height stools at that point. So that works well. Also, the advantage of that one is that can work well for the rest of my counters around and everything. Although one thing I will point out, sometimes my counters on my kitchen areas are a different material than my counter that's actually on the bar.
Yes.
And so by having them at different elevations, that's easy to change the material, and it's not as noticeable of a transition.
Yeah, when they're butted up to each other in their level, it's a lot more contrast than if they're
Right.
separated.
So, and we'll get into what those things are here in a minute.
Yeah.
But so the third alternative is that we're going to have it the same height as a bar. So we're at 42 inches. So now, do you make this space one level or two levels?
Ideally, you would. Well, it depends on the height. Honestly, it really does.
So
It could be different.
A lot of people, most people prefer it to be all one level.
Yes.
Because then you can, like you said, you can slide the bottle, you can slide the card, you can, the interaction across one plane is much easier than across two different ones.
It feels more natural too when you're both at the same level.
Right.
But I mean, like you said, you like the gravity drain jobs. So there's certain jobs where I'd imagine you have to organize the pieces a little bit differently to make it work.
Yeah. So sometimes they're at 30 inches. So the job that we did the photo shoot that was the death to the drone several weeks ago, theirs was at 30 inches.
The one where the drone got baptized?
Yes.
Okay.
That one.
Yes.
Yes. So that was at a 30 inch, and it's not uncommon. I've got several that are at 30 inches in height because that's what works with the drainage in the yard. But in an ideal situation, it's at 36 or 42 is even better.
Okay.
Those are the ideal counters. Now, I've done a couple of exceptions to those.
Okay, what is that?
So I did one that's 18 inches tall.
That's pretty short.
Pretty short. So basically, as someone walks up, you can sit on the counter.
Oh, wow.
It's the height of your chair.
Yeah.
Also, if you're sitting in a chair and interacting with them, you're almost eye to eye.
I would imagine this is kind of like a spa to pool connection. I could see, because you almost are like able to sit down on the bar and then swing over and then get in the pool, if that makes sense.
You could swing over and get on a bar stool. So the Hoffman job
Yes.
that we did, okay, they wanted to sit at the bar, okay, but the area that was in conjunction with that was the sunken fire pit, was only down 18 inches.
Okay.
And so the people that were sitting in the benches and sitting in the chairs were slightly higher than the people sitting at the bar stools, which to me is that's pushing the edge of how interaction. It's not as good of interaction because you're slightly higher than the person in the pool. So you're looking down a little toward the person in the pool from where you're sitting in the deck.
Yeah, but then the design is more versatile because not every day of the year you're going to be in the pool, and so you have a seat bench right there for the fire pit around that area.
Right. It was a big jigsaw puzzle of a project, and so we had to balance all these issues. And there wasn't a capability. The lot was too narrow to slide the cabana up next to the pool.
Mm-hmm.
So it had to be, and it was sunken down 36 inches, but it was still a little bit farther out. So the area in transition was the fire pit area.
So to put in perspective, 18 inches, is that tall enough to sit like crisscross applesauce on the deck and pretty much be level?
Yeah. If you were, yes, exactly.
With people in the water.
If you're sitting on the deck, you would be eye to eye with the person in the water.
Okay.
Yes, you would. We're going to take a break here for a second and get into outdoor living. So with outdoor living, we like to go to barbecue bits here. We're going to share some information of everything that you may want to consider in your outdoor living space as far as features, especially for the kitchen. Hope you enjoy this. So we have a party, and some people have large events, and when they have a large event, I mean, it can be 25, 30, 40, 50 people, right. And we want to have drinks for everybody. Right. And so the standard refrigerator is not going to keep pace with that. That's so right. To walk me through this solution.
We see a lot of people that have drop-in coolers. A drop-in cooler would be where you'd put your drinks in and add ice, and it'll hold for a couple of days. But this is constant. This requires a 110 power. It can hold up to 108 cans or bottles. This is only 24. They make it in two sizes, 24 and 36. This would either build in, or you can get a wheel kit. It can be freestanding. This is something a lot of you know about but have not specified, and it's gained popularity here in our DFW market within the last 2 or 3 years. And it's a volume server, like you said. Instead of going inside and out of the house, you can see top down. You can put glasses in there. You can put a wine bottle, a white wine bottle or two in there. But it's something that will define you to be different when you specify versus any of your competition.
Okay. So how do we deal with this bottle cap in a built-in?
This is a good question. This is only mounted here for display purposes, but we would probably put it around the end of the cabinet. It's what we would do, or up front is what you do. This would be all of your import beers that don't have the spin-off tops, or any of your pops and things like that, or soft drinks, cream sodas, things like that, specialty drinks.
Okay, so this is going to be mounted just like you would do a drop-in cooler, you know, at the top of the counter. So you just reach.
That's right. It's going to be a slide top. Also, this is a serving shelf. Your finished top can go over the top of this to hide this. If it's extremely busy, you'll see a lot of this in restaurants. They'll take off the top itself, and it will keep the drinks cool if there's constant people that are getting inside of it. It will domicile all the air down and below. You want to be careful on the setting of this not to set it down too low with the top on, because it can freeze drinks.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep, pretty cool.
That's a cool detail to consider. Well, thank you.
Yep.
So I hope you enjoyed the barbecue bits that we just featured today, and we'll have more coming up next week. If there's something in particular that you're interested for, let us know, and we'll get back into the episode now. So the Barstool scenario, which I've done a couple of times that I think that doesn't work, is the bar stool that's sitting and the counter is the deck you're walking on.
When you're looking at toes?
When you're looking at toes.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a little weird.
It's not a good interaction, okay? No. Because you're 5 or 6 feet up in the air to them, you're looking down. It's just to try to serve them. It's like, okay, I'm going to serve you a drink. I got to sit it down on the ground. Or if I'm going to sit a plate of food, it's on the ground. Okay. That's where someone walking by is going to kick somebody's plate or drink over, or that type of thing. So to me, if that's your scenario, I don't think it's worth putting bar stools in that location.
It could be they just want bar stools, and it's just pretty much putting bar stools next to the coping.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I could get it if it was maybe a great view, or there would have to be some reason to do it. But, you know, why are you sitting there? And this was in conjunction with a spa, but the spa was raised.
Yeah.
Spa was raised up 18 inches. If the spa, so I've got a project that we're digging here probably next week. Okay. And we've got bar stools that are sitting outside of the spa.
Yes.
And the spa's flush. Okay. That works 100%. You know, the tile dam wall is basically your serving counter. Now, it's always going to have this much water over it, but you can still set a drink on top of it, you know.
And, you know, both parties can put their arms up on it.
Yeah. So that's a really nice interaction and a real advantage for the flush spa. This other one where the spa was raised and there were bar stools over here, and they weren't like next to each other either. They were like catty-cornered. Yeah. So it wasn't the greatest situation in the world. But that's the one thing you've got to figure out is what height you're going to be at in the dry space versus the height of somebody that's in the water.
To add to the point of the job that's about to get dug, the water-to-water connection from the pool and the spa, I think it's a great spot when you get too hot and you can just switch seats into the pool and cool off.
I'd like that.
Yeah, it's kind of refreshing.
Because
you would love that too, because you get hot quicker.
Yeah, I don't like to sit in the hot spot at all. So I'd be the person that would just sit in the pool the whole time and talk to people that are in the spa, which would be great because then I can interact with them but not feel like I'm a cooked lobster. So is there a project that's one of your favorites that we've done bar stools on?
Let me look. Let me see one we haven't talked about. So The lazy river, I think it was the first one you did in the cave.
Oh yeah,
That's very
that's a cool one.
Yeah, I like that. It's kind of the same concept with a sunken space, having that cozy feeling of being protected by the elements around you. The cave is by far something that correlates to that very well.
So this cave was big enough that you could swim into, and there was 4 bar stools in the cave, and then there was a bar
Yep.
in there. So you could go in the middle of the heat of the day and get a drink and sit there, and then you could watch the people float by on the lazy river.
Yeah.
And so you were totally out of the sun and protected. And there was a waterfall that actually cascaded over the entrance of the
Adding a little privacy to the cave too. Yeah.
So it gave a little bit of sound and stuff like that. So you're hanging out there. And so that was a really fun bar area. So one of my favorites that I've done was a project that we did several years ago. And when we did this project, the problem was a couple of things. They wanted this sunken area right next to the house.
Okay.
Okay. And they had already put a roof up for us to be under.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the roof was supported by 2 posts, and they set a pier for the posts to rest on. The problem is whoever did the math didn't do the math right, and the pier was too high.
Ooh, that is an issue.
So if we came in, this thing was going to stick up out of the ground.
Yeah,
So
in the sunken area, you're going to have a column of a pier.
yeah. So what we ended up doing is I said, well, why don't I just come in and tear these piers out and put a new situation in? And they're like, well, what about this roof that's already there? So what we ended up doing is we went in and excavated underneath it. And we went in and tied the steel and shot the pool. And also we poured the floor of the whole cabana area.
Yeah.
And so then we came in after the floor was poured, and we came in and put bracing underneath that went from the concrete up to support
The roof
up above. And then we tore out the posts, and then we tore out the piers, and then we redid it. So I have a really fun picture.
I remember this job because I was actually there during the construction of it, and I saw it. It was just so weird.
The posts were levitating off the ground.
Yeah.
So I've got a picture of these posts aren't attached to anything that go all the way up to the roof. That's because out of the picture you can see it was the bracing that was holding it up in the air. So we were lucky because the builder, when he built the house, planned the foundation of the house and took the foundation down deep enough and formed it so that we could come in and build the cabinets up against it. So
because this sunken area is actually right next to the house.
Right next to the
Yeah.
house. So
digging a hole next to a house can get a little sketchy.
yes.
Yeah.
So that was, the engineering worked, but the foundation wasn't, he didn't come in and board form the whole thing. And so the concrete was a little bit rough. They had come in and dug a trench, and so we built the cabinets so it covered all that up.
That's good.
And we just made the cabinets a little bit deeper in that one spot so we could get, and we used, some appliances are 30 inches deep and some appliances are 24 inches deep and some appliances are like 18 inches deep. So if you plan your appliances where you have the narrower ones, where you have a narrower counter, then that you can make those things work. So that was what we did on that particular one. And it was fully enclosed on all sides, and everybody's like, so wait, that's a sunken one, and do you have a sump pump in it? And I was like, no, I had to drain the water out 120 feet into the yard, and at 120 feet I had the elevation drop that I needed for the sunken situation. So that actually did work. Now, one of the things we did on that particular project is we used the coping material, which was a limestone.
Okay.
Because we wanted it to match with the rest of the pool.
Yeah.
That was the decision that was made. And we could get limestone in really big slabs, and so we could get pieces that were 3 feet across. That wasn't a problem at all. The only problem with limestone is it's a softer material. And so it was sealed. And if this was a counter that was used at a very high rate, then there would be problems with it long term with staining.
Yeah.
So you have to talk to people about, is this space going to get used a couple times a month? Is it going to get used a couple times a week? I mean, how many times is this going to get used? Because you want to make sure your counter holds up. The durability of that's probably more important than the aesthetic part of it.
So is Luder something you would recommend use as a bar top now?
I typically don't use Luders as a bar top.
Would you use that as a deck material?
Oh, never. It's too soft.
Okay.
It stains horribly.
So, yeah.
But we do use it. We do use it for bar tops. We do use it for coping.
Veneer.
But, veneer works great.
Okay.
But you got to look at how soft your material is and how much traffic is going to be on that space. So in this particular situation, the traffic wasn't going to be high, and the aesthetics was the driving factor because they wanted it to be all continuous because it was a very monochrome setting and everything blended together.
It's a beautiful job.
And so that was what was chosen. But you as you think about your countertop, which we're going to dive into counters a whole lot more in another episode coming up here, but we should probably touch a little bit on them briefly, is you want something that's going to be durable.
Yeah.
And so the ideal thing that's durable is something that's non-porous. Okay. So
something you're not sealing every year.
Right. Something you're not sealing every year, something that's going to hold up well against staining and things like that. So soapstone is a material that I am not familiar with, but from what I understand as a kitchen counter, it works very well because it's a non-porous material.
Yeah.
It's quarried, I think, predominantly in Vermont and Virginia. And so I'm guessing the reason I'm not familiar with it is the cost of shipping it here to Texas is probably higher than what most people would see the value of. So they use an alternative material.
Yeah. We typically see granite or Dekton. That's the typical thing.
Right. So Dekton's another non-porous material.
Yeah.
So it's a great material. And again, I wasn't even familiar with this material 10 years ago is probably the first time I saw it.
Oh, well, I thought it was newer than that. It's crazy.
So I'm trying to remember the first job. There was 2 jobs that I had, and one was a client that moved from Chicago, and the other one, same exact year, they moved from Jersey. And they both came in and said, "We want Dekton." And I'm like, what are you talking about? Deck what? And they said Dekton. And I'm like, never heard of it. Must not be any good. And they're like, "No, it's awesome." And I'm like, "No, I've heard of everything that's awesome." And they're like, "No, this is really good stuff." So I was like, okay. So I did some research, and I was like, oh, there's nobody around here that has it. And I started looking. The only place I could find it was Home Depot, of all places, carried Dekton. Now, Dekton is a material that is man-made.
Yep.
But it's man-made of natural products. They use glass, they use porcelain, and they use natural stone.
I think it's inorganic or something like that. That's what they call it. Because they use natural, I don't know, but yeah.
They take it and they basically melt this stuff down, and then they put it under an extremely high pressure.
Like 25,000 pounds of pressure, something like the Eiffel Tower, like multiplied by 100 or something. I don't know. This isn't facts, but yeah.
It's a lot of pressure.
It is, yes.
I think it was closer to 5,900 or something like that. But anyway, don't count on me or Trey's numbers on how much pressure it's under. It's under a lot of pressure. And so then they make it to look like natural materials. So it looks like marble.
Yep.
It looks like, Corton steel. I mean, it looks like all these different materials that aren't the greatest things to use as a countertop because they're porous, and being porous, then they're going to have problems with staining and bacteria and all kinds of other things. So
yeah.
Anyway.
And it comes in different colors too that aren't naturally looks natural, has a natural pattern, but you wouldn't see it in real life, which I think is even cooler.
So one thing about the veining in it is the veining is only on the surface. So when you cut it, you have to be familiar with that. And the cutting of Dekton is the big deal.
Yeah.
So Dekton is more dense than granite. And so anybody that's going to go out and cut it with a standard granite saw, they're in for a disaster.
They're in for a new saw.
Yeah, so it's, you got to work with someone if you're using Dekton that has worked with it before. And if they've worked with it, then they know how to work with it, because they have to cut it slower and they have to cut it with a special saw and all these different things. But it's a great product to use as a outdoor countertop. And there's a lot of different things. Like I said, we're going to get into more, but typically here, granite's real popular material still, but the Dekton's probably, and it's substantially more in cost than granite because it's being manufactured in Spain, shipped here, and also the fabrication of it is more difficult than, a typical granite. So because of that, it's more expensive than granite. But I mean, it holds up extremely well. We're going to take a break for design concepts now. So design concepts, what we're going to do is talk about why we did the things on a particular job.
Swim up bars, bar stools, and stuff around it. Do you have a job in mind that you think of on this topic that you could describe to me?
Sure. So the project that I'm thinking of, he's on Lake Worth. And he said, I want to have an outdoor kitchen. And we're not talking just a grill and a fridge. We're talking everything. And I want a fireplace. And I'd like a swim up bar. And I'd like a bathroom. And a pool. And a vanishing edge. And a spa. And a sunken fire pit. All in this space. I was like, okay. So let's take a look at it. Now, this particular property had setbacks from the lake.
Okay.
So you had to stay a certain distance away from the lake. You also had a lot of trees. We had to stay a certain distance away from the trees to keep the trees alive. You also had setbacks off the property line that required us to be a certain distance away from that with the pool. And it was a different setback for the structure itself.
Yeah.
Okay. Then this was on a hillside that dropped over 20 feet.
Wow. That's a lot.
That's a lot. So we had to make this fit in this space. So his initial wish list wouldn't fit. So there was no way I could get all these things in there based on all the setbacks that we had. So he said, you know what? Don't need a vanishing edge.
Okay.
That was a nice thing to have, but I've got a lake out here. If I have a pool here, seeing a piece of coping is not going to kill me. And the primary view of this pool is we're a whole floor below the house.
Yeah.
So we're looking down on it. So that we're not going to look across at water to water connection from the living room every day or anything like that. So he said, take the vanishing edge off. The other thing we said is, let's do fire bowls instead of a fire pit.
Okay.
I still roast my marshmallows in a fire bowl, plus it'd be cool framing up the view.
Yeah.
So he had a really nice view that looked clear across the lake because there was kind of a jut out where his dock was and several other houses were that they kind of looked across a finger of the lake. He looked across the whole lake. He was the first house that kind of looked the whole way across. And so we said that was the primary view. So we wanted to be able to sit at the bar and look out across the pool and look at that view. We also wanted to sit in the spa and look across that view. So we tucked the spa off to the side towards the property line because the pool could be closer to the property line. And that left us, a space that we could put the bathroom and the sunken cabana. The only problem is to sink it on this hillside is we had to come in and build a retaining wall. And basically we were going to be from the grade down into this space like 6 to 7 feet down.
I bet construction was a little difficult.
Yeah. So we had to basically dig a pool, which was as low as the pool itself was, to set this cabana in. And so then we had to deal with the grading and drainage and everything that went on this piece of property. The other thing initially is he wanted it all to be rectangular. And I was like, there's no way that I can fit all these things in. He says, well, I want it clean and neat. And I said, can we introduce a few curves? And he said, yes. And so by putting the curves in on this particular project, I was able to stay far enough away from the tree and far enough away from all the setback pieces made it just enough. It's like rounding the edges off everything. The puzzle pieces fit together a little bit better by introducing these curves to the space. So we had a curve across the back of the pool that was flanked on both sides with fire bowls, the tanning ledge, and so where the chairs were and the spa were recessed off to the side so it didn't block the view from the swim up bar looking across the lake. And then we basically built this outdoor kitchen area, which was a retaining wall. Okay, so we had the sunken bar, and then on the other three sides, we had basically a chimney, which was one side of the leg of the retaining wall. The pizza oven was tucked in right next to the fireplace. So that's on one plane. Then we came in with the cold zone, which was, your sink, your fridge, your ice maker, your trash can was all in that zone. And then we turned the corner and we had the grill and the side burner, and we had a pellet grill and flat top griddle. Yeah. So that all went into this space. Okay. So it was sunken down. What we ended up with is the back side of the pool towards the lake was sticking 7 feet up out of the ground. So we had a big area, a drop off that we used basically the pool as the retaining wall. So the swim up bar we had dry seats and wet seats that basically you could sit with your back to the cabana in the water and look across the pool and look across the great view of the lake framed up by the fire bowls, or you could sit in the cabana and look across that, or you could look at the TV over the fireplace while you cooked everything in the world that you could think of. So it was a great project. We just found out last week that it won an International Silver Award, which was a really cool thing. But the most important thing is we took a space that dropped 20 feet that nobody but the dogs used and ran around in the grass. And we created a space that, you could cook anything you could think of in that space. You could sit out there and enjoy the space. There was even a bathroom out there, so nobody had to come through and get your house all wet. And then there was a nice place to sit in the spa, a nice place to sit on the ledge, and then there's nice bar stools, and then you can float around in the rest of the pool. So it's a great space. The concepts were basically, it was a design by setback. The other thing that had to happen, I had to get a variance for the height of the structure because the city wouldn't count. They were counting it from the floor of the structure all the way to the ceiling. And I was saying, well, it's recessed in the ground 3 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, shouldn't you take that off the height? And they're like, no, we don't. We count the whole way.
The pillars start right where it steps down.
Yeah. So
the bottom of them. Yeah.
Anyway, we got the variance from the city, so it all worked out. But it was a journey, and it's an awesome project, and they are thoroughly enjoying it this summer. So that's one of the coolest swim up bars and sunken kitchens, just because the math was horrendous, figuring everything out on that one.
I think that job definitely needed a bathroom, just from the climb you had to go to all the way back up the stairs, because it's so far down.
Yeah. Well, lots of fun. Hopefully we'll post some pictures of this and you guys can enjoy it as well.
Yep.
So the stools themselves in the pool can be manufactured out of a lot of different things. The typical stool that I see is a round stool.
Yeah.
A lot of people will come in and put a stone cap on that. And so that cap becomes a little bit bigger, so it's comfortable to sit on. I've had a number of people over the years that we've used the Luder's limestone, which I don't like for countertops, but it makes a great bar stool.
It does, yeah.
Top. And I always prefer to use the gray one, especially if I'm dealing with a plaster color that has more of a gray hue, an aqua blue, a blue surf type situation.
What if you're doing a black?
Now, I just had a client this came up, and I've used the Luder's on it, but the Luder's is too light with a black.
It
and
pops.
so
yeah.
Somebody the other day is like, well, why can't we use black granite? we're using black granite for other things here on the project. And I was like, I don't know why I didn't think of that ever before, but yes, we should probably. And we had a job recently that used a real exotic granite on the countertop for the outdoor kitchen and swim up bar, and there wasn't enough left of the slabs for the bar tops, the bar stool tops, and that would have looked really cool.
Talking about the blue granite.
The blue granite,
That's
which was with ocean blue.
Yeah.
So it would have looked spectacular, but that didn't work out. But yeah, so using a material, a granite, you could use a limestone. Some people will tile their bar stools. I'm not a big fan of tile because we've got a lot of little pieces there with a swimming suit and everything like that. If someone is a real good craftsman, I'm sure that could work out well.
Yeah.
But if they're not a real good craftsman, that could be something that doesn't work out well. So the bar stools are typically going to use a 12-inch sonotube to do the bar stool, and then I'm going to put a 16-inch seat on it so it's comfortable for someone to sit on. But that's the typical scenario. But
I have a side note for the bar tops. Just you just reminded me. When you have a customer who goes and picks their own selection for a bar top, make sure they measure and account for the overhang. That's a big thing, and especially when they cut it as well, because it's great to have that nice material, but it's very devastating when you design something and they don't follow it, if that makes sense, because they're doing it themselves. They're going out of their way and buying something. Right. Usually the builder will do that, but you have occasional customers, and like for instance, the one job that he had, like the first of many things you've done, like the grass and the acrylic and all that stuff. There's customers out there that have an eye for really nice materials, and it's awesome to work with, but just make sure to plan ahead if you're doing something like that.
Right. So instead of having the homeowner order it, you may want to order it. That way everything gets thought through.
Cross-check the sizes.
Yeah. So once you've got your stools set up, one of the things is where to put those in a pool. And a lot of times we're dealing with, hey, we want to put bar stools here so we can sit and watch the people play volleyball. Well, you don't want to be on the volleyball court watching it.
Yeah.
You want to be recessed off to the side of the volleyball court watching it. So typically, if I've got an active pool, I'm going to recess these stools off to the side so they can be, protected somewhat. And the other thing that comes into play with that is the depth of the area at the stool.
Yeah.
So a typical pool, this pool floor is sloping. It might be 3.5 at one point, and then 5, and then maybe it goes to 8.5, or it's a 3.5, 5, 4, but it's not uniform in height. And around these bar stools, I prefer to have them all the same height.
Yeah, that way it's because I can imagine someone that has difficulty swimming or is just shorter trying to climb up on a bar stool in the deep end. That sounds very hard. You have to pull yourself up on it. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. So like the one project that had the 18-inch difference in height, that was a bar stool area that was in the deep end. Of the pool. So the pool is 8.5 feet deep, but at the bar stools, when you stepped off, it was only 3.5 feet deep at that location. So, you can comfortable stand there as an adult, like you're standing on the floor, not like your floor dropped out from underneath you and it's, way down versus your table.
Yeah.
So that's something. So usually, as I said, we'll recess those to the side and also provide an area that's uniform in depth underneath them. And if the floor slopes, then we'll just have a step off of that platform down to the whatever the floor depth is at that location. Cleaning around a bar stool.
Oh, that's simple.
Yeah.
We have a podcast all about it, remember?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, floor system 100%.
Yeah. If
now there is some that you could probably get away with cleaner, the ones that pull out.
So There are
The removable ones.
removable bar stools.
Yes.
So you set up some bar stools that were all fabricated out of metal one time?
Yeah, so like with our volleyball anchors or basketball anchors, we had anchors for the bar stools, and I was on the back end of construction doing startups all the time, and there was a job I remember that had a sunken cabana area, and they had removable bar stools. They were, I think, stainless steel, and so you could just plop them right in. They're pretty light, and it was pretty simple. Once you got them in the water, they didn't move at all. They obviously spun, which is fun when you're a kid. But yeah, I haven't seen those since then. So I don't know if that was something special order or what. But
It was, I'm sure, because I
they're
haven't
out
seen
there,
it.
and that was probably 4 years ago. So I'd imagine that technology is a lot better. There's probably much better products out there.
Now, I sat in a meeting the other day talking to someone that had done some R&D and is actually, I think, got a patent on something. And there's going to be an acrylic bar stool that comes out
That's cool.
in the next year.
I like that because it's going to blend in a lot more, so it's not going to be as jarring.
Right, from a visual standpoint. Now, in my opinion, I would still, if that's going to stay in there most of the time, I still think in-floor cleaning is a situation that I would really highly recommend. But some people are like, well, we're going to take those out of the pool after the party. Now, I can just see that not happening more often than not. So that's why I would recommend in-floor cleaning. But
Me too.
if you're going to do a removable stool, I mean, that's possible. Now, Ledge Lounger has a stool as well
Yes.
that you can sink into the pool, or you can use it on the dry deck.
And it can
type
go
situation.
anywhere. It's not something you have to have a set spot for, which I like that part.
Right. But again, it's the type of thing, are you going to keep it in there, or is it just for the party for the weekend? Now, they built they have a bar set up with a
Swim up bar.
a swim up bar that they now manufacture as well, which should be something if you have an existing pool and you're looking at how do I incorporate bar stools and a swim up bar.
Yeah.
That's a solution for you as well.
Yeah, if you're tired of people kicking you drinks on the coping, you might want to get this.
Right. So that's a product that you can look at. But from a cleaning standpoint, I know of a client several years ago, and we did a built-in table. Wasn't a bar stools. And in fact, we talked about bar stools, and he said, well, my feeling is the way that this is set up with the bench that you designed and the table support and we're going to put the Polaris on the far edge so it can't get over there and wrap around it. I think we're going to be okay. And I said, I really think this is going to be a problem. He's like, no, let's go without in-floor cleaning.
Yeah.
Which was the last time I did this. So we finished the job and we're doing a photo shoot. It was actually featured on HGTV.
Okay.
So there with the film crew, we show up and I look down at the table and there's cinder blocks stacked in the pool.
That's a nice little detail aftermarket right there.
Yeah. And I was like, what's this? And he's like, I don't want to talk about it at all. Subject's over. I will take them out of the pool, which he did. Anyway, and I just looked at him and shook my head, and he's like, don't want to talk about it. So anyway, later on, we did talk about it, and he said that stupid cleaner wrapped around that table every single day. And that was the solution that I came up with to keep it out of the space. And so when the kids came over to swim, my grandkids, we'd pull the cinder blocks out so they could enjoy the table. But the rest of the time, there were cinder blocks on that bench all the time.
Yeah.
In-floor cleaning is a great situation. Now, I've got a project that's under construction right now with a lazy river, and we had 2 sets of bar stools. We had one set in the river, which was recessed off to the side so you could sit there and watch everybody go by. And also, it was conjunction with the structure that covered those bar stools. But there was a second set of bar stools in the pool because there was a pool in the middle and the river wrapped around it. So you could actually sit and talk to the people that are in the bar stools in the pool, talk with the people that are in the river Barstools and then the cabana area itself. So, that was a fun solution. We'll have pictures of that someday. Do you really like to have, is your ideal situation to have a roof overhead or not to have a roof overhead when you have bar stools?
If it was a perfect world and I could pick anything I wanted in the world, I would love the roof to overhang me when I'm sitting in the water at the bar. The reason, so even say it's raining or whatever, I would love my drink to not have water being put into it if it rained or anything like that. Now, also, I love the features with the waterfalls off the lip of the cabana, or the roof or whatever it is. I like that a lot, and I would like that if it went past the person. It's supposed to go past the person, ideally. So
yeah, we've got one of those designed coming up as well. So
yep.
Well, hopefully this gives everybody a lot of information to consider with the having your resort in the backyard. And we can create spaces that work well for you when you're designing a new project. But if you've got an existing project, you may want to check out Ledge Lounger's equipment set up for their bar stools that can be put in the pool, also with their swim up bar. And I think it's got an umbrella and all kinds of cool stuff. So there's lots of things you can consider, but hopefully you can create the right space for you and your family and friends and enjoy your space. And hopefully there's other questions that you have. Feel free to direct message us on social media or send us a request on the website, and we'll answer those questions for you as well. But
thank you for listening and watching, and whatever platform you're listening on, make sure to give us a rating if you haven't already. We'd really, really appreciate that. Send it to a friend if you think they'd be interested, or coworker or spouse or whatever it might be. And if you're watching YouTube, like he said, you could DM us questions. You could also just put it down in the comment section, and we can create it like a little form and answer all the questions y'all have. So
thanks again. Y'all have a good day.
See you later.